For a long while, Sony Xperia phones had a distinct look. You know, that blocky, squarish design with the angular corners and a metal chassis that many people have come to know and love. This design style created many beautiful phones, including the XZ1 Compact, which I still have and cherish to this day. But with competitors releasing ever more attractive devices, Xperia phones started falling out of favor with customers. By 2018, Sony realized that something had to change, so they went back to the drawing board and had to rethink the design language, coming up with something called ambient flow, a new aesthetic that culminates in this XZ2 Compact and later on this XZ3 here. Quite a marked departure from their previous devices. And it had a vibrator function. Before all of that, if you like the show, help the channel grow by giving a like and a sub. I'm really aiming for 5,000 subs by the end of summer, so would really appreciate if you could help me do that. You look at an Xperia phone nowadays and you see a square aesthetic with sleek, sharp lines as part of their long-running omni-balanced design language. But the 2018 Xperia lineup went in the exact opposite direction in an attempt to reach a broader demographic. The squared-off designs were traded for ambient flows, soft curves, to the point that it became kind of bulbous and blobby. Aluminum builds and flat displays evolved into domed glass backs and 2.5D Gorilla Glass fronts, further cementing the curviness of the phones. Of course, the XZ2 was the premier phone that featured this design language. But I bought the XZ2 Compact due to its smaller size and the very attractive frosted glass back processing that happened here. The XZ3 is released a little bit later in between the 2018 and 2019 lineups, updating the design to reduce the curvature and sporting the first OLED display in an Xperia phone. It's a massive upgrade in terms of colors and contrast to the old triluminous LCDs. Some fans considering this to be the best display ever to feature on an Xperia phone. On paper, these new designs are supposed to be more friendly, less intimidating, less techy looking, in appeal to mainstream markets in a bid to increase the sales. However, well, you can start to see some baffling and utterly nonsensical design decisions that were made by Sony in these phones. First is the fingerprint placement, which was too low, making you constantly touch the camera by mistake, though you kind of get used to it after a while. And for how thick these phones seem to be, Sony did not increase the battery size at all, with the XZ2 Compact fitting in 2,870 milliamps and the XZ3 a 3,300 milliamp cell, offering pretty mediocre battery life even for its time. The glossy and domed glass also made these phones rock up and down on flat surfaces, and they were very slippery unless you put a case on. But hey, you can use it as a fidget spinner, so that's something, I guess. Although you still get a micro SD card slot, the long-running fan-favorite headphone jack was removed for seemingly no reason but to imitate Apple. Still, some traces of the Sony enthusiast audio expertise remained, in the form of dual front-facing speakers that can actually match up to modern smartphone speakers even. Performance-wise, both phones were equipped with the best that 2018 had to offer, the venerable Snapdragon 845. However, I think Sony really screwed up when optimizing the chips in these phones, as it had the tendency to throttle quite aggressively when the phones get even mildly warm. For the most part, the Xperia still work fine, but there are some software kinks that make the phones lag quite hard periodically, especially when waking up from sleep. My guess is that Sony made it so the CPU, it clocks up very slowly from idle speeds, which is why it's affecting the smoothness of these smartphones. Usually I would say that you can install like a custom ROM to sort of breathe new life into these devices, but I have, as you can see on the logo on the back, the domestic Japan versions with a locked bootloader. So I'm kind of stuck with the stock firmware, which stopped at Android 10. What's even weirder is that Sony deliberately disabled new Android 10 features like the gesture navigation on these phones. I can only guess it's meant to like gatekeep the features to the newer devices. I don't know. Anywho, the stock firmware is quite true to stock Android, but you do get the cool reactive lock screen, some nice looking live wallpapers, and of course, who could forget the comedic and slightly disturbing 3D creator scanning functions. Another party trick is dynamic vibration, which introduced a haptic vibration unit that responds to music and audio video content in an attempt to let you feel the beat, so to speak. The problem is it was never that good, and it spent more of that precious battery life. And the constant rumble paired with the slippery back means you can kiss your fragile glass phone goodbye. So when you're not accidentally covering up the single camera on the back, it wasn't anything special either, sporting the same sensors from the XZ1 generation with fairly fast autofocus and okay shots in daytime, but well, not faring so well when the light fades. Now consider the competitors of the Xperias in 2018. You've got Samsung bringing their A game on the Note 9, arguably still the best power user phone ever made, with all the bells and whistles that you could ever ask for. On the iOS camp, Apple continued to refine their thin bezel displays on the iPhone XS lineup, whilst introducing the cheaper XR, which proved to be quite popular. Okay, so remember the sales graph I showed you in the beginning? Well, if Sony succeeded with the 2018 generation, they should sell more than 2017 numbers, right? So here's the results. With such steep competition, Sony's drastic departure, it just did not capture new customers, and it also alienated their loyal fan base who yearned for the headphone jack and the old designs back. To consumers, it was a sign that Xperia phones were finally out of innovation and ideas, and they just could not keep up anymore. For Sony, it was a gut punch and left them with a bloody nose. Never again would they reach the sales numbers that they attained at the peak of their smartphone sales careers. But I would argue that it was the XZ2 series and the XZ3 lineup that was the wake-up call Sony needed to finally break from years of stagnation. Realizing that they could no longer approach the mainstream market, Sony pivoted once again, ending the XZ label, adding back the enthusiast features, and returning to the omni-balance style, whilst also more tightly integrating technologies from the Sony Alpha, Walkman, and Bravia divisions. The XZ3 and the XZ2 Compact walked so that the Xperia 1 and Xperia 5 could run. Without them, we would not have seen the rise of the creator-focused, professional Xperia phones that we have today. The ambient flow design would also inspire other devices, such as the equally bulbous and ill-fated Bermuda phone, and the more successful Unihertz Jelly devices. And for all of that, the 2018 generation of Xperia phones, it makes an interesting footnote in the history of Xperia devices and in mobile history as a whole.